When this film hit theaters, the cinematic universe of DC superhero movies was in a pretty major slump. Their films were underperforming compared to their major competitor Marvel, and even despite that, they were generally considered to be pretty lousy films. Now, the roles have switched. Marvel movies and TV shows are laughed at, with a few rare exceptions, and the projects coming out of DC are generally of a higher caliber than they once were, with a few rare exceptions. These movies, for instance Joker, have even managed to move away from the cliched stereotypical action bash superhero movies, something which I have not really seen done since Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy. Now, I think it would be unfair and inaccurate to attribute this entirely to the film which we are looking at today, but I do think that the release of this film provided a glimmer of hope, a ray of light for the DC fanbase, and sparked a new interest for that franchise among audiences. Hello, and welcome back to another installment of Film Friday, in which I review a new film every single week. This week we are looking at the 2022 film, The Batman, directed by Matt Reeves and starring Robert Pattinson and Paul Dano. As always, this may contain some spoilers, so consider yourself warned. Overall, I was very impressed with The Batman. Sure, it was no match for the Dark Knight trilogy, but that wasn't really my expectation. And we didn't need it to be. We already have those movies, and this one was good enough in its own right to be well worth watching and coexisting alongside Nolan's works. In fact, it ended up being my second favorite film from 2022. The color and the look of the film was quite brooding and atmospheric, although it did indulge in itself a little too much sometimes. By which I mean they chose a color scheme which worked really well for about 80% of the film, and then didn't quite fit for the remaining 20%, but they still slapped it on there anyway. Basically, all the daylight scenes felt artificially and unnaturally dark and gray, but luckily the majority of the film took place at night, so this wasn't a huge problem for the film. But overall, the cinematography in this film was excellent and one of its strongest elements, alongside the score by Michael Giacchino. I was also glad that they did not begin this film with the backstory of Batman's origin or his parents' death. It worked well to include that in Batman Begins, but at this point it is a story element that everyone knows very well, and it wouldn't serve much purpose to rehash that yet again. However, despite all this praise, there were several things in the Batman that I took issue with. On the acting side of things, I was pleasantly surprised by Andy Serkis's performance as Alfred. I thought he fit that role better than I expected. However, I had mixed feelings about Robert Pattinson's portrayal. On the one hand, I thought his interpretation of Batman was really quite good, and he did a good job of making it his own. But I found his portrayal of Bruce Wayne to be subpar. He didn't possess the calm, collected demeanor that, say, Christian Bale depicted. He didn't convincingly play a billionaire, in other words. And the motivations behind Batman also seemed rather flawed. The idea that the driving force behind him is a quest for vengeance runs completely contrary to everything that Batman is supposed to stand for. And while the film may have been trying to show a realistic, humanized version of Batman by depicting him as flawed, I think they took that a little too far. Because the issue was not that Batman was not perfect. He's not supposed to be perfect. But what he is aiming towards is supposed to be good and just, even if he often falls short of that. Vindictive vigilante vengeance is not a good or a just goal to aim at. With that being said, thank you for watching, and be sure to comment your own thoughts on this film below. I am planning to do a longer video somewhere in the near future, diving further into this version of the Batman and what drives him, the motivations behind him, and the moral code that he seems to adopt. So, if you would be interested in seeing that, make sure to subscribe for more movie commentary and reviews.